Hello and welcome to nrnplus.com/live, newrightnetwork.com. We are here today for probably one of the most fun times we're going to have. And we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, and we're going to talk about what it's like to actually have things come up in your life that you can't deal with. And we're going to be talking to a veteran, a Marine. His name is Eric Rittmeyer. Eric is an author of, if it's not a best-selling book, it is a best-selling book. Called The Emotional Marine Book. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a fun hour. We are also joined by some very great guests. We have Joshua Macias. Joshua is the president of the Vets for Trump. We have Alexandra Levine, one of the most beautiful opera singers out there. Tim Fazenbaker, who is running for Maryland 02. Tony Osterhaus, who's a political consultant. And we have a whole bunch of other people, and keep running out of names. Vlad Lemitz, who is also with Vets for Trump. Phil Hecker is also from Vets for Trump. And, you know, we're joined by so many great people. And I thank everybody for being here today. And I really thank the Vets for Trump for simulcasting this evening today. We got a lot to talk about. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here, Frank. Thank you.
You got it.
Conversation.
So I want to get right into this. Eric starts his book in the introduction, and he talks about one of his one of his shortcomings, which in this age of COVID-19, I just joked with him earlier, is actually a good thing, because he talks about his shortcomings about his hair. Okay. Now I'm of advanced age. I didn't realize I was at advanced age, by the way, until this COVID-19. Now I realize I'm an old guy. Okay. But that being said, he doesn't have hair. And as Eric, you're in a good spot, because you follically challenged people do not have to go to the barbershop, and I can't get my hair cut. And right now it's almost down to like my shoulders. So Eric, I want to thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Frank. For the record, it's optional. Okay, I choose to shave my hair. Okay, you can take the Marine out of the core. You can't take the core out of the Marine. I choose. I still have some hair. I got a little horseshoe going on. I could do it. I'm cool. I just straight razor it up. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's fine, Eric. You know, my wife always kids me every once in a while. She tells me that I got a bald spot in the back of my head, and I go, where? So, it's the opposite of the George Costanza thing, you know. So I want to thank you very much. I want to dive right into your book, because in the first chapter, you talk about two things that are really, really important. You talk about being drunk in emotion. All right. Now, as an Italian from the Bronx, I will tell you that I have a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff built up inside, right? And it's interesting. I suffer from being drunk in emotion, because sometimes I let my passion speak for me. Talk to me about that.
This is the biggest issue. This is the problem right now, Frank. We all are emotional creatures. We're not capable of turning off our emotions. What we have to learn to do is control them. That's what mentally tough people are very good at controlling the emotion. It's acknowledging it. Okay, emotion and logic are inversely related. So as you become more emotional, you become less logical, and vice versa. Our nation as a whole right now, I refer to it as being drunk in emotion. We're incapable of logical thought. All of our beliefs are all tied around how we feel about the president of the United States. If we like him, everything's good. If we don't like him, everything's horrible. Our nation needs to sober up, learn to think logically. But ultimately, the big misconception is people think that you can turn emotion off, which you cannot do. The issue is we receive no training for this. We go through school. We memorize, regurgitate, sit down, take a test, the highest scores, go to the best schools, get the best jobs, make the most money. Problem is, it doesn't work. You graduate, you go on your first job, somebody says something that upsets you. What do? You go bonkers because you don't know how to control the emotion. Mental toughness is all about acknowledging it and knowing the effects that your words and your actions have on other people.
Yeah, the other thing is when you're locked indoors, okay, and it's just me and my wife here, in our home here, okay, and you're locked indoors, you kind of don't have that emotional ability to communicate with people, which is really important. And then it really gets to you after a while, and I'm an emotional guy. My wife is an emotional Italian. She's half Sicilian, and from Sicilian descent. We talk at maximum volume all the time. Okay, so a whisper to us is kind of like everybody yelling.
Yeah, and that's again, everybody's different there, and that's the key, Frank. And see, what we don't understand, and what people now are just kind of ignoring, is the fact that we are suppressing. We're asking people to suppress something that we're innately hardwired to do, which is connect. When we don't allow people to do that, there are long-term effects because of that. I've said this from the get-go. We viewed this whole COVID thing from what I refer to as a single variable analysis. Our only objective was to preserve physical health with total disregard for everything else that comes along down the road, a month, 3 months, 5 years down the road. What we're seeing now is what everybody predicted. We needed to view this from a multivariable analysis. Yes, we have to protect ourselves, but we also have to look at what happens a month and 2 months and 6 months down the road. The Great Recession from 2008, there were massive amounts of suicide that followed that, because of the issues that we went through. We're not paying attention to these things. We're asking people to do something that we need to do, which is connect and be part of each other's lives.
Well, I wrote an article on newrightnetwork.com about a month ago, where all the people in the mainstream media just piled on Dr. Phil because he said that this is going to cost us. This is not good for our country, this lockdown. And Dr. Phil was not talking at all about the physical disease. What he was talking about was the mental disease and the effects on the mental people. And as I said in my article, Dr. Phil has as much knowledge of vaccinations as Dr. Fauci has in mental health. So allowing Dr. Fauci to dictate how we're going to do things without considering the mental health aspect of it is horrible. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Eric.
And I wrote a piece on that as well, and I titled it "Medicine is a Science, Politics is an Art." And the two of them have to converge together, and there needs to be a way for them to come together to say, okay, if we're strictly looking at this from a science standpoint, we'll be shut down to 2030. So there's a time where everything has to come. And that's where the media has done a very good job of instilling fear in everybody. When you peel everything back and look at the facts for where we are, infection rates, death rates, if you start peeling all that back, I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with the fact we misjudged this. We've ruined our economy. There's 36 million people that are on unemployment right now. They're predicting 40% of those jobs don't come back. How about that? I mean, how do you explain that? So now that we have all these facts, there needs to be adjustments made to say, okay, let's quarantine the ones that need to be quarantined. Everybody else go out. Don't lick doorknobs, social distance, but quarantine the ones that are most susceptible. Comorbidities, underlying health conditions, diabetes, lung issues. Let's keep them aside. Everybody else go out and do your thing. But it's all a matter of the media manipulating and the media instilling fear, which is what they're very good at.
Eric,
absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I'd just like to chime in on a couple of things that Eric pointed out, which is amazing, man. You just hit the nail on the head quite a few times. The cure is worse than the disease when it comes to this current pandemic situation that we're in. I mean, you can see and you brought up even in the Great Depression. I mean, that was exactly what caused all that, was a great movement, and where the cure is worse than the disease. And that's where we are today. And that's where the economy is. That's where people are mentally. And we could talk about another Marine who has fought for awareness, who wanted to take action, who took his own life just a week ago, who was inside of our community. So this is happening time and time again, and we're sick of it. And we want to see, just as NASCAR did, NASCAR came back, and we had Open for Business again, and Vets for Trump, and Tim Faison-Baker, and all of us on there, all running around on the track, showing that they can actually get back into business and do things the right way. And we can do it the right way. This is America. We can be innovative. We can get it done.
And Josh, I'm sorry, I want to dovetail on that because I've been reading a lot on this as well now, and I catch a lot of slack for this, a lot of the radio I do especially. I am thoroughly convinced right now there's a pretty large portion of this country that does not want to get back to normal. And it makes me sick to my stomach, but there's actually pieces I'm reading now that there are a lot of people on the left that are very concerned about the economy now. The economy's starting to pick back up. And that's horrifying to them. So it's horrible. It makes me sick to my stomach to have to feel like just because you're disliked for somebody, you want the whole nation to do poorly. And the minute it starts to pick back up, which it's going to do, it's almost like you don't want that. It's that negative energy, which drives me nuts. But I do feel like there's a pretty large subset of this country that does not want things back to normal. Good news is not good news to them because it means they're going to lose the election. FYI, you're going to lose it regardless.
You understand, and you raised your hand to an oath on the Bible just as I did, and you have the flag behind you just as I do, and we have that keen understanding from as a veteran's perspective as to what is patriotic and what's good for the country. And we've been downrange, we've been overseas, we know what it's like over there. We've come home and we're bunkered in our own community. We want to see it thrive. We want to see it fruitful. We want to see it like the tree of life. We're giving to everybody around us, but they do not have that mindset. And that's why it frustrates us as vets.
And that's what's missing, Josh. You probably know this stat. 7.3% of our population right now are veterans. If you want to talk about a change in this country, let's go back to mandatory military service. You know what you get with a veteran. I don't care what branch. I don't care where you served. I don't care what color you wore. It doesn't matter to me. You get commitment, integrity, accountability, loyalty, service before self. You don't see color. When the chips fall, you got my back. Yep, I got your back. That's all I care about, dude. Nothing else matters to me. You see that in the military. The problem is it only makes up 7% of our population. So there's no common fabric now. There's no social thread. Go back to World War II, our grandparents and all that. Everything was about what are we fighting for? What do we got? Oh, we're fighting for the same thing. Now everybody's going a million different directions. There's nothing that brings everybody together. A couple generations get skipped. So now our parents didn't serve, maybe our grandparents, a couple generations get skipped. I can remember sitting on my grandfather's lap. He was a World War II guy, watching these movies in black and white. That's you can't get that anywhere else.
No, I agree. My uncle Phil was one of the guys that stormed Normandy. Okay. And he never spoke about it at all to anybody. Okay. But he spoke to me about it because I asked this, Uncle Phil, how bad was it? And he says, Frankie, I can't talk about it. Now I'll tell you, Uncle Phil was the nicest guy on the planet. Okay, he was so gentle, and I know what the effect that had on him to see his buddy right next to him die, okay, and get shot when he's coming off the boat, okay. And the camaraderie when my Uncle Phil died, members of his unit, came together. And then they told me a story about him. They told me a story about how they had the town was surrounded by Germans, okay? And my Uncle Phil found that there was an orphanage in the middle of the town, and were starving the children. My uncle got rations from every one of the people in the unit and went down underneath cover, took his uniform off, went down underneath cover and delivered the food to the orphanage. Okay? My uncle was a hero, and nobody knows about it. I didn't know about it till he died. So the things that you guys do, Josh and Phil and every one of you guys do in battle that most of us would never hear about.
No, and, right, Frank. And you just talked about Normandy, and we're on the 75th year of victory. And my cousin, is Sir Admiral Beecham Ramsey, was the naval admiral for D-Day. That is my family connection, my bloodline. And he died in 1945, and he is the hero of Dunkirk. And he's also called the forgotten hero of World War II because his plane crashed a year after. You don't hear about him in the history books very often. They don't talk about the Supreme Allied Naval Commander, without which we wouldn't have had all of those the Navy go in and what we have for D-Day. But that's the legacy that they passed on to us generationally. This is who we learned from, and that's why I raised my hand and I went in and I served and volunteered. It's because of the family lineage that was passed to me, and that is not the military that they served in anymore. We don't see that in the DoD today. But what ties us together, why Eric, myself, Vlad, Phil, why we have such a unity is because we've been downrange. We know what it's like to survive from the firefight. We come together with unity here on U.S. soil with clarity, with conscientious understanding. Back then, it was just called shell shock. Now we understand with post-traumatic stress, what it does with neuroplasticity, where our brains are at. And for myself, with the degrees in neuroscience, we understand now what we can do. And that's why General Don Bulldog has been on board with our community as well. He understands post-traumatic stress. He was the first one to come out as a general and talk about it. And in this community, it's just a misunderstanding, a misnomer on what is really true about how we can move forward with things. And veterans understand it, and they can take lead.
I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that because it's really important, and we talk about this for a second. Okay, everybody got on President Trump's case when he talked about loyalty. Okay, and I can pretty much gather. My son was military in the Air Force. Okay, and the person that he was when he went in was not the person that came out. You know. My wife and I joked about his in basic training, and we got a letter from him, and he sent us a check, and he said, "I think I owe this to you, Mom and Dad." You know, and we're scratching our heads, and we go, "That's not the same son that went in," you know. But he learned the importance, and he came out a man out of that. But the thing that I want to touch on is loyalty. You said it, Eric. I think you know, we're all thinking about this. If you don't have loyalty, if you can't trust the guy next to you, who are you going to trust? And President Trump got thrown into office. He had no clue the viper's nest that he walked into. Seriously. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
That's a great point that you're bringing up. What we see a lot of times politically is people talking about identity politics. And what that does is that pits us against each other. So loyalty is really about just being together, being what President Trump has said about it being America first. And it's just about, you have to have a unity together. If you don't, you have people that are against each other. You can't trust people. And then you don't have a nation. So loyalty is important, and the identity politics need to stop. As Eric was saying, you know, you don't have a color when you're in war. You need that buddy next to you in that foxhole that you can trust, because the only thing that matters is that you stay alive and that we are Americans, and not just a balkanized group of people that live here. No, we are all Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, you ended the first chapter by saying, with trust, anything can be done. Without trust, nothing can be done. These are powerful words, one of the strongest leaders our country's ever seen.
Mad Dog Mattis. He is just an absolute machine. The commandant of the Marine Corps, he's a beast. And that's exactly right. And that's what he's always said, which is very, very true. And take military. And it is such a good, there's so much to be learned from the military, because what we're trained on and what we have to do translates so well into real business life. Like we get put into positions where we might have to deal with somebody we don't like. We just make do. We get put in positions where we're under stress. We get through it. It's that common thread that's so missing. We live in the outrage culture right now. The minute somebody disagrees with us, they automatically default to these defense mechanisms of name calling, you bigot, you racist, you fascist, just because we disagree politically. We don't extend any type of courtesy. We don't extend any type of tolerance to people because we disagree with them. So we've lost the ability. So now it's just all about the narrative more than there's any type of evidence. We don't care. We don't care about facts. What we care about is our belief system, which is tied to an emotion, which is tied to nothing factual. And the minute you give somebody facts, they go bonkers, they go bananas. So how can you have a decent conversation when you can't get facts involved?
Well, I tell people you can't debate
identity politics, you know, and I you know what people assume we don't have that in the military. You hear my accent, right? So obviously, I have a Russian accent. In the military, a lot of people, you know, we all poke fun at that. But in the end of the day, you're right, and we do not have our only color in the military is green. We're all one team, one fight, you know. So even though my buddies used to call me Pinko and stuff, we don't have to see color generally in the military. You know, we're all in this together trying to accomplish one mission. And it was very big shock for me, because when I first got to US, I joined military pretty much right away, you know. And so this is a culture that I was brought up in, and I saw how effective we could all work together when we put BS aside. And when I got out of the military, that was a real, shell shock for me, because I saw so much dysfunction, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I had friends in the military call me snow nigger because, I'm from Russia. So, and then, yeah, you're laughing, but that's my point. And I did not see the same kind of ease on the outside world here as we have in the military. So I think some of the cohesion is something we need to bring back with passion. And I mean, to where as mandatory draft, it'll be a good portion of that, but also that is a double-edged sword, because we have a lot of people who were drafted who complain about it quite a bit. And then some of these people are in politics now, and they have been ruining a lot of things for us.
Selling us out.
Selling us out.
Well, one thing it's missing, it's like searching for, the honest person. The one thing that's missing in politics, and even in life in general, gentlemen, you could talk about this, and Eric, you touched on this. Integrity is a word that is barely used today. I will tell you, my word is my bond, and I'm not lying to you, and I will not lie to you, and I'm not going to work with you if you lied to me. And you said in your book, never lie to someone who trusts you, and never trust someone that lies to you. Because I'll tell you this, the second you lie in a relationship, that's the most important fabric, my relationship with my wife, we trust each other because I know that she's going to be there for me, and she knows I'm going to be there for her. And when you stop and you lie, and integrity is lost, you can't build that in an instant. Integrity is the most important. Eric, I'd like you to talk about that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, it goes back to what you learn in the military. I've never met anybody on this call in person. I can tell you for fact, the minute any veteran meets another veteran, there's an instantaneous understanding. We know what's up. We do. We know what we're getting. Mm-hmm. We know I could literally be like, hey, Josh, I need you, bro. Done. That's just the way it works in the military. And it's so lacking because we're growing up now. The kids are growing up. It's about social media, more into social interaction. They're not taught any skills. They're not taught to appreciate. They're not taught to respect. And again, I'm one of those weirdos that talks about mandatory military service. And I'm not talking about a rifle, go blow stuff up. It could be national service, something where you leave your home and you go away for a couple years and you learn what it's like when it's bigger than yourself. You learn how to deal with issues. You learn how to deal with people you don't like. You learn how to be in a position where you're upset and you have to deal with it. That's what the military teaches you. But instead, these kids are being brought up eating Tide Pods, yelling and screaming at people, wanting to get violent with you because they disagree with something you say verbally. There's been studies done on this. It was UC Berkeley. There were like 25% of the people they polled on campus said they viewed forms of speech to be an act of violence. So if somebody said something they didn't like, that was equivalent to a violent act, which meant they could come back at you with violence. That's insanity. Like, where did they grow up that just because somebody says something they disagree with, they don't know how to show any type of disagreement other than violence? That is a lack of emotional intelligence. That's kids that are growing up to read books and take tests and not know how to deal with opposing points of view. That's all that is.
Yes, and even the books and taking the tests, we now are teaching kids to take tests, okay? We're not teaching kids the critical thinking that it took to take the test. We're teaching them the answer A plus B is C. That's it. It's all they have to learn. They don't have to learn how to get to C. And Frank, what's the problem? Go ahead, Tim.
What happens a lot of times, and we see it all the time, is that these veterans go and they protect us. They do whatever they got to do, and they're loyal Americans. And when they come home, that integrity you were talking about is not there, right? Because the politicians play politics with the military and all kinds of things, and we see it happen with the people blaming the people in the military, saying that they're bad and they were spitting on people coming home, say from Vietnam, and they try to pit them to be us versus them, and that's wrong. And then secondly, you have politicians that don't honor what it really means to be a veteran and to take care of these types of people. So they sorry, I lost my video for a second. We have like veterans hospitals and veterans facilities that don't go back and give the resources to the veterans, and they end up giving them to private development or somebody else. But if you don't honor those who take care of your country, we will become the way of Rome. And Rome used to take care of, I'm a history buff, Rome used to take care of its veterans. They surrounded Rome with the veterans because they knew they were the first line of defense to protect that city. But once Rome got the mentality that the veterans weren't as important anymore, and they didn't take care of those who took care of them, then Rome fell. And that's exactly what can happen here if we don't honor those who take care of us and protect the people who've always been there to protect us.
Man, Tim, that was spot on, brother. That is exactly what is going on in America today. You just hit the nail on the head when it comes to how they were still, it broke down for them, didn't it? If you're history, you follow that because he wanted to give land to the veterans. But what happened? It started to break apart because they were not holding to their promises to those who served. And that's what's happening in the red, white, and blue, because every veteran that has committed suicide, of the 100,000 plus over the years of their fighting Wahhabism, as we have for 40 years now, 4 decades. The reason why we wear this, why we talk about ending 22, ending 27, and how we've been fighting for this is because America said, hey, you're going to write this blank check because you're willing to sacrifice all, as many have. That's why we have the red, white, but why we have freedom, why we wore our dog tags on Memorial Day, to honor the fallen, to honor their sacrifice, is that red, white, and blue said, we're going to back you and we're going to bring you back to wholeness from before you came in. But that is not happening.
No.
Not seeing the mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional well-being of the veteran and the family members being taken care of. We have families that have lost their breadwinner, the one who's bringing in the income, due to post-traumatic stress, that are no longer with us, and they're not service-connected deaths. They're not given the SGLI, and they should, especially within a certain window of transferring out. That is obvious. It's happening in Canada. I don't even like to point to our Canadian brothers for that socialism zone. But when it comes to that mindset in the mental arena and the mental clarity, they understand it, and they know that a lot of wounds are not seen. There are a lot of things that you can't see that happens to us downrange. And we feel it, we sense it, we know it's a problem. And America needs to step up and take care of the veteran in the community and stop from this pushing out mindset, but pull them into communities like yours, Tim, where you're taking action to help the veteran plant in, and in Florida and other states where we're taking action. And that's the difference that needs to be stated, that red, white, and blue has got their back.
But Joshua, here's the thing that's the problem. It's our leadership, which lack of, leadership, The Democrat Party, and Eric touched on this earlier, would rather destroy the country, than have Donald Trump win re-election. They would much rather, and the press, add that to the fact, would much rather throw propaganda at the American people and make COVID-19 probably the most vicious attack on our country, and not worry about anything. Somebody want to say something? One of you guys want to say something back there? You should, oh, I'm sorry.
Right. No, you're right on point. There's no leadership. There's no leadership. It's true followership of this alt-left agenda that wants to see a globalist reach, socialism. That's why they are receiving even drones from the CCP to maintain social distancing. They are wanting it to be more and more like socialist communist China. Their actions are right out of Mein Kampf. They do not want to see America be used and controlled by veteran community and led by them. They would rather manage America and pay up to their oligarch, whoever that is, inside of their socialist agenda, their Marxist communist agenda. That is what's going on. It's clear as day. And they have created in the media, that's why it's great that we're doing this, because the drive-by medias have put mental triggers. And Tim, you could talk about this. It is constantly a negative trigger. And we know this from neuroplasticity. They just keep pointing negative points and connotations against our president so that they are triggered. We're all, and Eric was talking about this, right? We have this big trigger inside of us that with our hearts, and we can be triggered as well. And it wants to go off and explode, just like an ordinance that any of us have seen, and like the guns that we carry, right? There's a trigger in those guns, but there's a trigger in our heart and our soul, and they love to point and press on that trigger. And it is emotional cocaine to everybody. That's what they're doing. They want that, and they understand the psychology and what's going on.
And
tell
Josh,
people, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I would say, Josh, and what you're referring to, which is what the media has done, we're not even aware of. It's called systematic desensitization. So systematically, you desensitize your brain to some type of pain. It's also referred to as exposure therapy. So if you're fearful of something, you consistently put yourself in that position until you basically develop this almost like it's fun for you at that point. You systematically desensitize. That's what the media has gotten very, very good at. Is we're being desensitized. Look at like the AOCs of the world. Okay, the Green New Deal, it's insane, it's crazy, it's nuts, so it's whatever. The more you hear it, the more they enforce it, the more they say it, it starts to become more acceptable. Then people start jumping on board with it. So they're basically trying to get through the back of brain, and they say it so much that all of a sudden we feel like it's not that bad of a deal. I mean, we're desensitized, and our brain starts trying to find a way to locate these things. It's called reticular activating system. You probably know this. They're neurons on your brainstem that basically filter out information. So if I said, Frank, have you ever seen a red Escalade before? You say, I've never seen a red Escalade, Eric, never in my life. 5 minutes later, you walk out the front door, you see 5 of them driving by. That's called reticular activating system. It's kind of a tricky way to get things through front of brain, which is what stops everything from getting the back of brain. The front of brain is what shuts things down. Reticular activating system finds a way to make these things happen. So when the media consistently puts these things out there, when they consistently say these things, people start to really say, well, maybe that's just the way it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's what's so scary. It's almost like we're like, remember, these people are just being like put under some sort of trance, and it's like, oh, before you know it, it's like, oh, who am I going to vote for? The one who's not big and dumb and mean. It's crazy. It's scary.
Right.
Well, so, I want Tim involved in this.
Eric, this is in Russia. This is called something very different. It's called hypernormalization. Okay, to where we normalize things that they're, well, it's the same concept, but it's called hypernormalization. To where we would take the concept that would seem absolutely absurd at first, but we bring it a little bit at a time, and people get so used to it. So every day there's a story, and it's just at a certain point it just becomes the norm, and you're no longer paying attention to this.
Right.
Yep. Perfect.
Tim, I want to bring you in on this one thing. I want to talk to you about this for a second because you're on the psychological perspective of this. Okay. I'm going to take you all the way back to Trayvon Martin in Florida. All right. When the situation occurred with Trayvon Martin, the name of the gentleman that attacked Trayvon Martin was George Zimmerman. The press went crazy. Why? Because they thought that George Zimmerman was a white Jewish guy. Right? That was what they thought. And they went crazy. Unfortunately, it didn't fit the narrative. But ever since, what the press continually does is find situations occurring out in the field so that they can pit racism, sexism, whatever ism you want to throw out. Tim, I want you to talk about that because that's your background.
Yeah, without getting too nerdy in psychology, one of the best behavioral psychologists was Pavlov, and many people have heard of the Pavlov's dogs. And it's basically getting people to salivate with something, or you can desensitize, you can train their behavior. So, with Zimmerman, I remember that was the first time that the media heard of a white Hispanic. Now, I've always considered Hispanics, I don't know, it was kind of white to me, but that was the first time. And we realized what was going on was now they had an agenda, and it was, we're going to make this guy bad. And people started to see that there. And what happens is you have people that are, they're very smart. And the anti-Americans, they are smart. And a lot of people say, oh, Democrats, leftists, they're dumb. No, they used a lot of the psychological warfare, in a sense, to really get people to go to their side. And that's how they've been breaking down with the military and the pride of this nation and the communities. And here in Baltimore, we were proud that we had so many different communities, but we all have one commonality, which was we were Baltimoreans or Marylanders or Americans, and they take that away. So I always tell people, you're playing on a different field. If you're trying to change someone's mind, you're trying to get them to see things our way. You have to understand that they're not looking at things through a logic-based filter like many of us on the right are. They are thinking with emotion. And I love when Eric says, they're drunk with emotion, because that emotion is so much stronger than logic. So we have to find a way to be able to communicate to these people a lot of times and say, hey, look, you were sensitized to certain things. We can talk to our points, but we have to get in their minds with a mentality that they can understand and with that emotion to make it so that it's important for them, or else the country's going to continue to fall and we're going to become like the Soviet Union was, or some other third world nation now that has dictatorships. That's not America.
I
Tim,
want to
can
bring
I hit on that?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm hogging everything. I'm sorry. Us Marines like to
No,
talk.
you're not.
Come
This
on.
is about
I
you.
don't get to talk very much. I mean, I cut my hair all the time. I don't get to talk very much. Tim, what you're bringing up is an awesome point, and that's one thing. If we're aware of these things, emotional intelligence and mental toughness, a big part of it is self-awareness. We have to understand that as humans, we are hardwired to feel first and think later. So just about every decision we make is going to be an emotion-based decision. Then after we make that decision, we try to find logic to support it. This is happening subliminally. So if we don't know that's what we're doing, we're not going to understand why we're making certain decisions. If we don't know when we're emotional and we don't know when we're logical, how do you make these decisions? How do you make these major decisions? 99.9% of the time, if you make a decision in business or in politics based on emotion, it's going to be a bad decision. So if you're incapable of differentiating between the two, they get woven together. So all of a sudden, what you're doing is you're making decisions based on these glasses that have lenses that are skewed by experiences we've had from 30 years ago. We've developed these beliefs that aren't tied to anything fact-based. All they're tied to is something that happened to us long, long time ago that's been implanted in our brain and becomes our reality. And the minute somebody questions that reality with the facts, it turns into craziness and insanity. How dare you question me? My great Aunt Susie told me that at Christmas. She was drunk. She drank a six-pack of beer and smoked cigarettes. She told me. And then the minute you show a fact, here it is. Now it's you're horrible. You're the worst person. Until people accept facts and accept the fact that that's going to override your beliefs, until they're willing to see an opposing point of view, it's going to be button heads. Nothing's going to get done.
Absolutely. I want to bring Alexandra into this conversation for a second. And Tim, based on what you just said, okay? Alexandra, you come from a Jewish community. I come from an Italian community. Tim's talking about the different communities in Baltimore. Where I grew up in New York, it was the same thing. You had Chinatown, you had Little Italy, you had all the different groups. Italians felt good amongst the people because they could trust them to react in the same way. Okay, and same thing with the Jewish community. I have very close friends who are Jewish, and they gather together not because they don't like other people, but because they know what to expect from people of the same background. So, I wanted to bring you in on that.
I mean, that's true. But one of the main things that I think needs to be discussed is that there's a big influx of Orthodox Jews, specifically that live in Tim's district. But this happened in New York City, particularly in Brooklyn, where there are Jewish people that gather and they pray. They pray 3 times a day, specifically the Orthodox. And they do stand near each other. And there was a rise of COVID-19 in Brooklyn. But the problem is that the mayor of New York, Mayor de Blasio, he singly called out the Jewish community and basically told them that they need to stay at home and that they are causing the spread of this virus. And he's calling out the Jewish community. As a Jew, I've been hated my entire life. I grew up in a small town, Sarasota, Florida at the time. I was heavily discriminated against as a Jew. So this really sits home for me. And I know that Tim understands this wholeheartedly because he and I go to synagogues together in his district. So when somebody's telling you that because you're Jewish, you are spreading this disease, that really hurts somebody's, self-esteem. That really hurts them mentally and emotionally. So Tim and Eric, Tim first, can you please talk about how we can educate the voter on how it's not good to call out a single ethnicity for the spread, and how can you educate your voter to see the bigger picture of this, and that what Mayor de Blasio did was very bad in calling out the Jewish community.
So what's going on, and it's been going on since the beginning of mankind, is you had to find a common enemy to rally people around to a cause. And we've seen it with the Nazis and all throughout the world. You pick a bad guy and you say, these are the bad people. And then you get people to rally behind it. And then they will end up just following along. And a lot of times blindly, they'll do things that they normally wouldn't do because now they think there's the bad guy, we're the good guys. And so identity politics plays into this. When you When you break down people into groups like this, instead of being American, then all of a sudden you have people that will go after these groups and they want to blame somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's natural for people to say, let's just put the blame on somebody else. It feels much easier when you do that. But when you do that, you destroy people's mentalities. You give them complexes. The suicide rates go up, and then the violence goes up in different communities. It's why we need to think about all of us. We're Americans first. And then we have our own cultures and things like that. They all contribute to being American, but we need to be Americans and not balkanize these groups and different cultures.
Can I hit on that?
Go ahead, Vlad.
Good
Go
one.
on.
Sorry.
I wanted to say, actually, I'm very proud of our Black community, how they've been walking away. And right now there's a movement called Jackson too, with the Jewish community walking away from democratic plantation. And I also want to inspire everybody else. If you're a military guy and if you're afraid to step aside and say how you really feel, please don't be, because nothing changes if nothing changes. You are the change, okay? And Russians out there, look, there's nothing wrong with being a Russian and being a Republican, okay? It means you love this country. So there should be more Vladimirs out there, who are saying this. Unfortunately, we need a Russia exit, okay? Because there's a huge Russian communities, and I do not see them being outspoken, even though I speak to a lot of them, and I know how they really feel. So we need to be that change, and I'm really glad that you touched on this with Jewish community, because one thing that specifically is going to be the other shoe that drops is Jackson. Okay, that is going to be.
Yeah, I can talk a lot about Brexit, because I was always a Jewish Republican. At the age of 18, I will die a Jewish Republican. But I have traveled all over the nation, and I also have family that have moved to Israel. What we say, made aliyah. They're American citizens. They keep their dual citizenship, that vote in our elections. They voted 95% for Trump in 2016. They will vote for Trump in 98% in 2020. And I talked to Jewish Democrats that they've not specifically changed their party, but they will not vote for a party anymore that does not represent them. And with the anti-Semitism that is happening, especially coming from the squad and in Congress, it is hurting the Jewish community, and it is opening the eyes for Jewish people not to vote for the Democratic Party ever again. And I want to say for the record that the incumbent congressman that Tim is going up against, Out of Touch Dutch, supports democratic socialism, supports CARE, which is run by Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which are known terrorist organizations. And that's why we have to get Out of Touch Dutch out of office, because I know for a fact that Tim Fazenbaker supports the Jews and supports the Jewish community and supports Israel. And I know for a fact that he supported the move of the embassy. He supported the acknowledgement of the Golan Heights, and he supports everything that the president stands for. He also supported combating anti-Semitism on college campuses. He also supports, and I'm speaking for you, Tim, but you also support working with Congressman Dan Crenshaw, who's the Republican down in Texas, to make it mandated to teach the Holocaust nationwide. It is only mandated in 12 states in the nation. We have a Holocaust museum right here in Washington, D.C. I know that Tim Fazenbaker will work to get the students to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. and to make sure that we get the proper resources in the classroom to teach the Holocaust and make it mandated in the state of Maryland to teach the Holocaust.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, first off, Alexander, I'm getting ready to run 10 miles real quick because I'm gonna go out and hit speed bag something. You just pumped me up. Okay, so you want to talk about narrative versus evidence. Okay, anti-Semitism, Jewish violence. If you want to talk about media, let's talk about that. How the violence towards the Jewish community is off the chart, and it gets a fraction of the airtime. Why is that?
Correct.
How do you have people in Congress to support the whole BDS movement but claim that that's not anti-Semitism? How is that? Explain that to me.
I want to touch on that. Hold on.
That's something that I've touched on. We had the HR resolution, the 183, that was supposed to combat anti-Semitism. It was supposed to call out the squad. It was supposed to call out Congresswoman Omar and Rashida Tlaib and AOC. But what happened is that the left is so scared of the squad. They're so scared because of who is backing them, the money that is backing them. They have Hamas, they have CARE, they have the Muslim Brotherhood, they have Louis Farrakhan, which is the Nation of Islam. They have all these people, George Soros, who's an anti-Jew Jew, who is supporting this. And they're paying these people off. And that is the problem. And that's why we need to call these people out. That is why we need Tim Fazenbaker in Congress to call these people out. And Tim, I want you to touch on this
Okay,
too.
hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
You're going to have to, hopefully
Alexandra,
you won't have to deal with these people.
Alexandra, slow down. Alexandra, I get what you're saying. We have to take it back to this. Without the Jewish community, civil rights would never have occurred. Okay? In 1964, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel marched arm in arm with Reverend Martin Luther King, okay, on his march on Selma. The Jewish community.
Problem, Frank, is that Jews, Blacks, Christians, Hispanic, we can all come together as one. Just because you're a Jew, a Black, a Hispanic, you do not have to vote for the same party every single time. And that is what President Trump tapped into when he said to the African American community, what the hell do you have to lose? Tim and I agree that we say to the Jewish community, what the hell do you have to lose? Why do you have such chutzpah to vote for the Democratic Party? And that is the message that Tim and I go to every time we go to synagogues in his district.
I'll tell you this. I have as much in common with Andrew Cuomo as an Italian, okay, as I have with the wall, okay? I have nothing in common with the wall. I would never vote for Andrew Cuomo because he's Italian. It's just, it doesn't work, okay? Voting for somebody is based on what you believe and what your belief is. I want to change the subject just for a second here, because I want Eric to talk about this. The left owns the language. They have found a way to focus group everything. The term kids in cages, that was focus group, okay? The term white supremacist was focus group. The new word that they're using now is called distraction. Everything that President Trump does and everything he says is a distraction. Eric, you got to talk about that because that's the key. They are using the language and propaganda to push us to a certain direction.
It goes back to systematic desensitization. And think about this logically, Frank. When you look at their motives and when you look at their game plan, what else do they have to rely on? Give me one person that can say, okay, you don't have to like Donald Trump for he's the big orange man, he's mean, he's stupid, whatever, he tweets, whatever. Take all that aside. Look at his list of accomplishments and tell me anybody that can look at that list and say, I can do better. There's not a single person. They have no talking points to do anything better for this country. Not a single one. The only thing they can rely on, because they can't look at his accomplishments, the only thing they can rely on is instilling fear into enough people that makes them believe he's a horrible man. Disregard everything he's done. Never mind everything he's done for all the different communities, all the different people, the economy, the veterans. Take all that stuff for Israel, for everybody, whatever. Take all that. Nobody can compete. So what else are you going to do? You have to name call. So when you look at their game plan, they're just reaching for straws. They have nothing else. What are they going to do? Joe Biden? I mean, come on, what's he going to do? And that's another prime example of us as a nation being so ensconced in our political bubbles that we can't even differentiate between right and wrong. Okay, I don't care if you hate Donald Trump. The fact that we have substantial evidence that Joe Biden raped Tara Reade, and everybody's going to turn a blind eye to that, that is a prime example of extreme intoxication and emotion, that you hate President Trump so bad, you can't admit the fact that he's a rapist. There is significant evidence. It's not even like we're saying like, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. You got her mom that went on air on CNN. You have her ex-husband. There's court documents that show that they said she had problems with this person. You have people that are Biden fans that are saying, no, she told me this. This is like, she truly did say this. You have the leader of the Me Too movement saying he can be both accountable and electable. The leader of the Me Too movement. So what's that say to every woman who has ever been raped, who has ever been accused, who has ever accused somebody? What's that say to her? It doesn't matter to you because we dislike the person he's running against. It's absolute insanity, and it's the whole country because of this, because we can't go through all this stuff. All the hatred supersedes everything else.
What we did to Justice Kavanaugh was an abomination of this country. And the Cory Booker Spartacus moment, where he got up and he did a Spartacus moment, I really understand something at this point in time, okay? Whoever runs against Cory Booker should go down and let him eat every single word that he says. because that's how you run against the left. You have to point their words and use it against them. Distraction for a veteran and a man that gave his entire life to his country, General Flynn, that is unbelievable. And then, vets, I want you to talk about this for a second, because this is where you stand. We need to have a way. We need to have a way to have every single vet know, like if you go to AA, okay, that there's a buddy for you. Okay, we need to have a place for them to go to know that there's a buddy, that they don't commit suicide.
We're right? Actually.
Yeah,
so,
we're working on that.
So
may I?
Go ahead.
We started a VSO together with Josh, and I'm going to let him go away with this, okay?
Yeah, right on. Well, one thing I'd like to say, and Frank, and I want to just back up to what we were just talking about as well, and with regard to the community environment, right? Within the vet, and then I'm going to speak on this and General Flynn and talk about jurisprudence. That's a really big deal. So just to back up, in our community, in the veteran community, as Vlad had stated, you either see all green and that's it, because we don't look through those lines. We don't look at people and to their gender conversations, and we don't go through the race baiting. We don't get wrapped up in all that stuff. We're mission critical, mission focused, and we're focused on what is necessary to take care of the red, white, and blue, and take care of our brother and sister, that is with us, and downrange, and whatever is going on, we're focused on that. So we're focused on the blue. If it's a haze gray and underway for the Navy, that's what we see, right? We see the color scheme of whatever uniform we're in. And that goes all the way down from an economic knife fault theory for somebody who is a veteran that owns a business, and whether in Fortune 1000 or they're just an E2 that just got out and is sleeping on the street. They see the same thing. And in every demographic, for myself and Hispanic, we have the Lexit movement, right? You got Jexit over there. Everybody, Blexit, they're moving away from the Democrat plantation, and they see that that is not working, that it is not working, and that they support the president. And that's why we have come together. We wanted to see the veteran voice get augmented, because the America that we're in right now, that has been controlled by the left, that has been demonized, that everything is upside down. We all feel as veterans that we're in an upside down world right now, especially when it comes to the politic leadership that's been going on in numerous states. And we're sick of it. We're fed up with it. We want action. And we understand that the enemy of our country, that there is an enemy. Number one, there's an enemy out there. If, in case everybody didn't know, that there's people out there that want to see you dead. They call you the great Satan, and they do not want to see you living. They do not want to see you breathing, and they don't want to see your children living, and that they're teaching their children how to kill your children. And if people don't understand that, then you're right, Eric. They need to sign up immediately, and they need to go down range and figure it out, because we've seen it, and we've survived that firefight, and we come home, and we're like, what is going on in America? This is not when I signed up 10, 15 years ago, what it was like. And I'm back home, and I want to see things done for my legacy to continue, because we fought hard. We fought hard downrange to ensure that we had the red, white, and blue flag up in all its glory. And our community is sick of it. The Persian Gulf War veteran, the Afghan veteran, the Vietnam veteran wants to take action. And that's where our communities come together, with numerous grassroots organizations like the VSO We Who Serve, that's all about the mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional well-being of the veteran and the family member. And that is in every demographic, guys. I'm Hispanic. My family comes from Spain, and my other family side of my family comes from England. And I'm one first-generation immigrant family member. My father was born in New York, in Brooklyn. Okay, they understood the small community, and they understood getting together, but they also were able to get arm in arm. And for veterans, just as Eric said, man, we have loyalty. We trust each other implicitly. We would cover each other's six. It was only 6 fighting veterans in Benghazi who barely knew each other over a few days that held back hundreds of jihadis. We would do it down here in America in an instant, get together. and we're all about it. We even touch base with each other when we're around each other. Hey, how's it going, man? Oh yeah. Oh, what are you packing? Oh, I'm packing this. Oh, good. I'm ready to cover this. Hey, I've got all these covers. I've got every angle covered. Oh man, I'm sitting here at lunch right now. I've got my back to the wall because I'm watching the exit. I got your 6 covered. We just say these things naturally. It comes out of us because we've been so trained, and it's in our mindset, right? We can see clearly when there's an enemy, and we know how to target the enemy. We understand their ways. We understand the psyop, and we're in every demographic. And that is what helped win the presidency for our president. Alongside General Flynn, I saw numerous states, and I went to numerous events, and we saw millions of veterans come out to vote for our president that had not voted in 3 election cycles. And that is our community, and they're going to do it again. And they will do it for the future, and they understand this community, and they understand America. And this is what's going on. This is the movement. This is the backbone of making America great, keeping America great. It is a veteran, and then we represent every demographic: Latino, Black, Russian, Jewish. Go through it all.
Absolutely.
I wanted to touch on that specifically because you mentioned action, and this is what is different between our community and a lot of other veteran organizations like the American Legion, VFW, right? So we're actually very much action driven, especially in the political arena. This is why we are partnering, and working together with guys like Tim, okay? Because they're a prime example of what kind of people want to push up front. We're working with a lot of people in a lot of campaigns right now across the country, specifically. Most of them are veterans, but we are putting a lot of patriots who are pro-Constitution and pro-Second Amendment, and pro our Bill of Rights. So that's what Trump has numerous things that we're doing together, with nonprofits, non-governmental agencies. And like I said, we have our own DSO called We Who Serve. You can actually check it out. WeWhoServe.us. There's some information on there right now. And our other wing is a political wing, which is what we're trying to work with candidates like Tim, and that's called Chasing Freedom. And it's a federal super PAC, okay? And that's how we're able to accomplish that. And it's also on chasingfreedom.us. But this is what the conclusion that we came to. When it comes to taking action, we are actually the only community right now that is actively, veteran communities that is actively involved in politics right now and in changing veterans' lives to begin with. That's why we have 2 distinct wings. One of them deals with veteran issues, and the other one deals with politics. So.
Well, veterans need to know that you guys got their 6. I know for a fact that that's the case. I've known you guys for a short period of time. I can rest assured that your one focus is the vets and the health of the vets. Tim, I want to end this up, with you, because you're running. Everybody here, you're the guy that, at the end of the day, that we've got to elect in Maryland too. Okay. Give me a reason why it is important that you be elected to retire Dutch Roethlisberger.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I know that these guys here have my 6. And I'm not a veteran, but I'm an American. And I think they know, and millions of Americans are going to know, that I have their 6. And I always will put our veterans first, because it is their right to be taken care of, because they have protected us. Same thing with American kids. We have to protect those Americans that are fighting for us. What we see so many times is these politicians get in there and they put themselves first. That's not me. And other people say those things, but I have fought so hard. And I'm a military family. I have a daughter in the military. My wife is military. Everybody around me is in the military. And, it's my family. So you don't have to be a veteran necessarily to understand it, because as I think Josh was saying earlier, the families suffer as well. So the families go through these things. We experience them, along with those veterans. I will always stand for our veterans first, because if not for you having our 6, we wouldn't even be in America, wouldn't be America today.
Absolutely. Tim, America is a melting pot. Yep. I love the movie. I think it was it was a movie where we're all out there trying to be, we're Americans, okay? With Bill Murray, okay? And Bill Murray, we're all meatballs. We're all Americans, okay? I'm Italian American. Okay. I got Jewish American friends. I got Black American friends. We're all Americans. All right. And every one of us, and I go back to my high school guys, we would do anything for one another. Okay. We would do anything because we grew up together. We're in the same place. And Eric, I want to say one last thing. I want to thank you for joining us today with your book. I will tell you this. I'm going to give you a quote from your book. No matter the situation, never let your emotions overpower your intelligence. I will say this. Everything can be related to The Godfather. So I'm going to relate it to The Godfather, where The Godfather said, never let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking. Okay? Which is around the same age. And I would like to say, if you want to do an analysis of emotional intelligence between Sonny and Michael, and it will show you the difference between having your emotions overpower you and not. Eric,
and I want to leave you with one last thing that Tim just said too, which I in the Marine Corps, everybody's probably heard this, but the motto is Semper Fidelis. Okay, Semper Fidelis is Latin for always faithful. And I think moving forward as a nation, instead of putting people into groups, we just have to look at each other and think Semper Fi. I'm always faithful to you, regardless of veteran, not veteran, white, black, belief system, doesn't matter to me. If we can get back to always being faithful to people, just taking them as humans, that's what's so great about humans. We all have the same core psychological blueprint. We're just different variations of it. That's all it is. We all want love. We all want kindness. We all want caring. We all want empathy. If we can start treating each other with empathy and with always being faithful to each other, this whole nation gets better. But until we get away from the anger, until we get away from the inability to see an opposing point of view, we're going to sit here and butt heads all day long. Something has to give. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to hit on that with what Tim said, because Semper Fidelis, I think, is probably the absolute best way I could end this. Always faithful.
Absolutely.
My Marine.
All right. And let's tell you this. No matter who is in your neighborhood, look outside in your neighborhood, look across the street, look next door to you, find out what the guy next door to you might need. Okay? I walked out, my neighbor said to me, hey, we have some extra potatoes. Now, I don't need the potatoes. You should put potatoes in my mailbox. Okay? We're always look out for your neighbor, because this is the United States of America. And that's what we're about. We're about looking out for one another. We're about making things happen. Okay? And as you guys say, when you got each other's six, when you look out for your brother, that's when you're going to have to worry. I got your six, you got my six, I got Tim's six. Tim, I hope you get elected. I hope you win your primary. It's coming up next week. Let's get it done. Let's get it done, America.
How can we find you? How can the voters find you to vote for you?
You can find me at timfazenbaker.com, or on Twitter, you can find me at America1 Tim Faze. Same to Eric. Where can we find your literature, your books?
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. I still need to get some signs from you, man. I swear, I will run down Bel Air Road, plant signs to the ground. I swear, I love you, man. On my website's best. Thank you. It's mentaltoughness.speaker.com. Same thing. I'm on Twitter, catching hate there at Mental Speaker. But I'm all over the internet. I love hate. I do like hate. I'm not gonna lie. I like hate. I like it because that's all you got. Like the minute you start calling me names, I'm good. I got it. You know what I mean?
You lost the debate. They lost the debate. That's the only thing you got.
Yeah, and
I'll leave on this. I'll leave on this because I'm not a minority. I'm a white male. I got to tell you this. If I was a minority, I would be absolutely up in arms, irate, angry, pissed off at the way racist gets thrown around these days. Racist is not a term to be used for somebody you disagree with politically. Racist is for somebody who deserves it, the scum, the percentage of the people. But they are the exception. They're not the rule. This country is not full of racist people. That's the media instilling that in people. We do not hate each other. Are there people who are racist? Absolutely. Are there people that are going to kill because of the color of your skin? Absolutely. But that makes up a small fraction of this nation. The media needs to stop pitting everybody against each other and saying, okay, there's 0.1% who act like idiots. The other 99.9% aren't idiots. We love each other. So let's stop with all this putting everybody against each other and just get back to Kuna Matata. It means no worries. Lion King, guys.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you, everybody.
And
Thank
Josh,
you for.
how can we find the veterans? How can we look up veterans?
Please, thanks. I appreciate that. So you can find us on veteransfordonaldtrump.com. You can also see us on Twitter at Vets for Trump. Please find us on Facebook. That's Veterans for Donald Trump and Vets for Trump. And I agree with you, Eric, and we're going to get together. We're going to help Tim to win in his district, man. We're going to make this happen. And I agree with the Hakuna Matata mindset, man. Let's get this back to just America, taking care of America with the golden rule. That's also something you spoke about in your book that is so needed right now. We need veterans and their family members like Tim to step up and to take action and take leadership. And that's why we're back in Tim Fazenbaker. And that's why we need more Erics like you, Semper Fi Marine, to get out there and share your voice, because I know a Marine loves a good fight. And I'm all about that too, man.
Bring integrity back to Congress. We got to bring integrity back to Congress. Let's elect Tim Fazenbaker.
We need integrity in America, Frank, and
yes.
Every level. Jurisprudence, as you said before, it is necessary that we see jurisprudence in America, the equal measure of the law from everybody, and that's why Flynn needs to be exonerated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we should have a talk on that one. We should get some people together and talk on that one. Why Flynn should be exonerated.
I've got a team that started Clear Flynn now, Pardon Flynn now, reinstate Flynn right now. We can make that happen. Look forward to it.
All right. Look forward to it. I want to thank everybody at nrnplus.com, newrightnetwork.com. This is what we're about. We're about bringing this to you daily. Okay. And thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. It's been a great day.
Everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Let's shut it down. Obi, take it away.
Hello, fellow Vets for Trump. This is Josh Macias, National Director. Excited to come to you about Tim Fazenbaker. Tim is a man who understands the family and wants to put Americans first in his agenda in the 2nd District of Maryland. And if you're a vet who is for Trump and you're in that area, please look up Tim. He's a man that we endorse and fully support, and we want to see you get behind him as well. Josh Macias, Vets for Trump.
Hi. I'm Tim Fazenbaker, congressional candidate in Maryland's 2nd District, and I want to thank Veterans for Donald Trump for your endorsement. Supporting our veterans is an issue I care about deeply. Unfortunately, many of our veterans hospitals across this nation have closed their doors. Here at the former Fort Howard Veterans Hospital, doors have been closed since the early 2000s. In 2014, arsonists set fire to the main hospital building, causing severe damage. Currently, this property is guarded by security. My goal is to restore properties like this back to veteran use. Veterans need their own hospitals and programs so that we can help them with issues such as PTSD and physical disabilities. We need to provide innovative services such as telehealth so veterans have easier access to doctors and healthcare providers. 22 veterans a day take their own lives. And as a former executive in the mental health care field, taking care of our veterans will be at the forefront when I am elected to Congress. These men and women put their lives at risk every day, abroad and at home. It's time to give back to them. This endorsement by Veterans for Donald Trump will help provide more resources and preserve institutions for our veterans. As a member of a military family, I have the utmost respect for men and women in uniform and all that you endure. Again, I want to thank Veterans for Donald Trump for your endorsement, and it is time to take care of our veterans.
2-1, 4 more years.